All right, so in the last video, we saw Socrates defending the idea that the just life is better than the unjust life, particularly against Thrasymachus's view that the unjust life is clearly better if we commit to the unjust life because we'll get more of the things we want. And if we get more of the things we want, clearly our life is going to go better. Socrates said a bunch of stuff about the function of things, right? And so the soul has a particular function, which is reasoning and rationality, and it can only do this well if the soul is just or properly organized. We'll get further into that in a bit, but at this point in the conversation, Thrasymachus drops out. He's been sort of belligerent the entire time, and he says he's had enough of dealing with Socrates. He just says, whatever, Socrates, you're right for now. But Plato's brothers, Glaucon and Adeimantus, are not satisfied with the conversation, and they still believe that Socrates hasn't proven that the just life is better than the unjust life. So Glaucon takes up the mantle here. He takes over for Thrasymachus and says, look, there's some good reasons to think the unjust life might actually be better than the just life. And so he puts forward a series of claims that try to prove this. And the first is that justice is just socially constructed, right? There is no objective definition or objective meaning for justice. It's just a social construct. What does he mean by this? Well, he means, look, justice is just the organization of self-interested beings into a mutually beneficial relationship where we save ourselves from the unrestricted actions of others, since we will all fare better under a system of cooperation, even though it limits our freedom. In other words, look, if we were all completely by ourselves, that would suck, right? We'd end up dying, or we'd end up trying to take everything that we want and failing because someone else would catch us and then just kill us or take all of our stuff too. So the best thing for me to do as a self-interested being is just group myself together with all of you and put together a little system of laws that protects us from one another. And so we'll call that justice, right? Justice is just the social construct of us making a mutually beneficial group and obeying the laws of that group in order to maintain that group and the protection it gives us. And this is a really popular idea throughout the history of political philosophy, that somehow justice and our duty to obey the law is based on a social contract. You'll see that throughout the Enlightenment period, especially with Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, and Kant. Somehow our self-interest makes us form a state with one another, even though, right, we lose some freedom. Right? In the state of nature, we could do whatever we want. Once we enter into a society, our options are limited because we have laws that govern how we interact with one another. But the idea is supposed to be it's to our own self-interest. So, claim 1, justice is socially constructed. Claim 2, well, if we really come together only because of this social contract, right, then none of us are obeying the law because that's what we want to do. Right? Obeying the law is our second best option. Our first option would just be to act unjustly and get whatever we want without being caught. So Glaucon says, look, if we could all do that, that's what we would do, right? If we could all go around the city taking whatever we want, doing whatever we want, that would be our first preference. Because we know we won't get away with that in real life, we settle for our second preference, and that's obeying the law. Right, so justice really isn't sort of valuable in itself. It's only valuable for the things it brings about, and we would give it up if we had the opportunity. And he gives this story of the Ring of Gyges to try and convince us of this. So the ring turns you invisible, and he says, look, whether you have an unjust natural character or a just natural character, right? You have an evil person who finds the ring or a good person who finds the ring. Eventually, both types of people are going to give up on their principles of morality or justice and just start doing whatever they want because they won't get caught. And Glaucon makes the further claim that we would all start laughing at the just person if they didn't take advantage of this ring. Right? So you are, just imagine you're too poor to afford a laptop, but you want a laptop, and then you find this ring. Glaucon says we should laugh at you if you don't go steal a laptop with that ring. Right? You would never get caught. No one can see you. Nobody knows what's going on. So you should take advantage of that. In other words, being unjust is the way to go, and that's what we would choose if we all had the choice. Now, I find this not very intuitive. Right? I don't think I would do these things if given the ring, but who knows? Maybe he's saying something deeper about human nature, right? We all are restricted right now. We don't do everything we want, and we think it's out of a sense of morality and duty, but maybe if we were all put in this position, we would give in to the temptations of the ring and start acting unjustly. If, right, the social contract is really just our second option and we really would prefer the first, if everybody would really prefer the first, then it does seem like he might be right. Okay, and then the final claim he makes is, and this comes partly from Adeimantus too, is that we're better off when we merely appear to be just and then secretly get away with injustice than we are when we're really just. All right, so there's good evidence for this, they think, in the fact that people seek justice for the consequences or rewards it brings instead of seeking it for its own sake. So both of the interlocutors here are saying, look, when you appear just, you get all the benefits, right? People trust you, they praise you, you get rewards for these actions that appear to be just, so on and so forth. But the person who merely appears just and really is unjust on the DL, right, in secrecy, they are unjust, gets the best of both worlds. They get all the benefits of appearing just, while also get all of the benefits of actually acting unjust. And so, the life in which you merely appear just is better than the life in which you are in fact just. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so put all three of these claims together, right, it seems like the unjust life is really a better one to live. Right? The just life is our second option. We only do it for survival, and we could get all of the benefits just by appearing to be just. So that's actually the best life to live. Right? Actually, live an unjust life where you appear just, because then you get to realize all of your first preferences, whereas the just person does not. The just person is restrained by all of these different rules. They can't do what they want at any given moment. Okay, so here Socrates says, well, look, now you've really backed me into a corner. I can't just sort of do away with all of your arguments individually. This requires something a lot deeper. Socrates thinks now he has to actually put forward what he takes the true essence of justice to be. He must define justice or do his best to recollect his innate knowledge of the form of justice. Then he can tell his interlocutors why justice is good in and of itself. That means not for the consequences that it brings. And thus the just life is better than the unjust life, even though the unjust life seems to have so many advantages. Right? So now Socrates has to buckle down and he has to do what he's been asking everybody else to do throughout the other dialogues, right? He's saying, hey, give me your expertise to find these words. Well, now, in order to overcome these objections by Glaucon and Adeimantus, he must put forth his own expertise about justice. He must describe the essence of justice, because only then can he explain why the just life is better than the unjust life. Right? It's going to be really, obviously, it would be very difficult to describe why the just life is better if you don't know what the just is. So that's where we're going now. He's going to try and define justice for us so that he can show why this logically implies that the just life is a better life to live. Now, how are we going to start doing this? Well, he's going to start by inspecting justice in the state. Right? So he says, look, let's inspect the nature of the city, and let's locate justice in the city. And then we can take what we found about justice in the city and apply it to the individual. Now you might ask yourself, this sounds like a strange tactic. Right? This is a strange strategy. Why believe that justice in the city is anything like justice in the individual? These two things are very different, right? One is an inanimate object or a collection of beings. The other is an individual being with rationality, so on and so forth. Right? Why would justice in a city look anything like justice in the individual? In other words, how is finding justice in the city going to tell us anything about justice in the individual? Well, here, luckily we already studied this last week, the correct answer is the theory of forms. Right? So if both of these things share in the form of justice, right? If there is such thing as a just city and a just individual, then they're both sharing in the essence of the form of justice. Right? So in other words, there's something common between all the just things in the world because they all share in the form of justice. So if we can figure out what justice looks like in one thing, we should be able to see how that applies to all of the other things. So if you find justice, or you think, let's put it that way, if you think you've found justice in the city and then you look at the individual and you can't find anything like that there, either you have the wrong definition of justice or there is no such thing as a just person. Because if they're both truly just and you found the correct definition of justice, there should be something that applies to both objects. All right, so hopefully that's clear. All right, so the overall strategy is find justice in the state so that we can understand the essence. Understand the essence of justice in the state and then apply it to the essence of justice in a person, right? Find that common denominator between the two that looks like justice. And that is where we're going in the next lecture. Thank you, everyone.